Let me welcome those joining us today for the January 5th, 2021 Weber County Board of Commissioners. I'm Commissioner Gage Frohr. I'll be chairing this morning, at least the start of the meeting. And I'm joined today by Commissioner Jim Harvey to my right, Commissioner Scott Jenkins to my left. We will start with a Pledge of Allegiance given by Commissioner Harvey, invocation with Shelley Hallisey, and the thought of the day, Commissioner Jenkins. And then we'll go to public comments. Commissioner Harvey.
Audience, if you'd stand and then repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet here in this commission meeting. We're grateful for our elected officials and for the care and consideration that they put into their jobs. Please bless them that they'll continue to serve with honor. Bless us that we have a safe day today. I ask for these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Commissioner Jenkins.
Thank you, Commissioner Frohr, Chair. It's good to be here with you today. We're fortunate today as we've been able to sit and watch new folks being sworn in at our inauguration ceremony this morning. And now we'll transfer the gavel here today from one commissioner to the next. Well, it's important. It's really important to make sure that we get along, we respect each other, and that's what this is all about. And I really appreciate you two commissioners and what's happened here and is happening here. But it's also good, we have wonderful employees in this county, public servants, and so many people don't understand that. I've been here just 2.5 years now, and as I have been here, I've had a lot of people call me and not be happy with me or with things that are happening, but only of all the time I've been here, I've had one call on a snowplow driver. And when I sat and talked to the individual about the snowplow driver, we talked about where he plowed that snow and how he pushed it to the end of the driveway and how he wished that didn't happen. And I told him, I says, don't get mad at the snowplow driver. I says, that guy's just doing what we tell him. I says, I'm the guy you need to get mad at. And I says, if that message doesn't get back to him, it's my fault. Nobody else but mine. And it's interesting. He calmed right down at that point and said, okay, I understand what you're saying. And I said, don't worry, we'll take care of that. And I talked to Sean, and he talked to Joe, and Joe talked to the snowplow driver, and never heard another word. And that's the way it's supposed to work, though. But it's important that our employees understand that public servants work for the public. We are their line bosses, but we all serve the same master here, and that is the citizens of the county. That's the boss here when we talk about it. And it's important that we all understand that we're just doing a job for them to help them with their lives as best we can. And it just makes me really happy to do that. And I think in this county, we do a great job of that. We do a great job of that. And I'm just so proud. When people walk into our office up there, a lot of times they walk in confrontational. They walk in with guns a-blazing. And there's been a few times, that, I've sat back there in that room, and I've sat there and listened to these gals talk to these guys as they come in. You sit there and think, okay, should I get up? And how are we doing out there? And there has been a time when I stood up and walked out and got what I felt was between them and our gals, our secretaries that manage our office, because I felt like maybe somebody was getting a little intrusionary on them. But for the most part, we really do a good job up there. And we try to make people feel safe and at home and inviting when they walk into our office. And if they want to set up a time to meet with us, we almost never turn them down. We meet with anybody who wants to meet with us. And that's what it's supposed to be like. And I just hope we can continue to offer that service, because we do a great job. And Stace and Shelley and Christy, you guys do a good job in our office, and I want you to know that. All right, Mr. Chair, that's my thought of the day.
Great, thank you very much.
You bet.
Great thought. Appreciate that. Okay, let's now hear from members of the public, either here in the auditorium or online. Do we have anybody online, Shelley, that would like to make a comment? Okay, anybody in the chamber?
I'm online. I'd like to make a comment when available.
Go ahead. Can you give us your name?
Absolutely, Commissioners. My name is Paul Joyce. I live in Huntsville, unincorporated Weber County, out near the monastery.
Welcome.
Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys. And Commissioner Jenkins, thank you for those comments. Totally agree. You guys are doing a good job. About 2 years ago, I had the pleasure of addressing you three commissioners around a pretty grave situation of water in the valley, and I got to very specifically address some land use code, specifically of new developments, and what the culinary and secondary water requirements were of new developments. It's section 10642. You may remember it, you may not. It's been a couple years. But I come before you today to readdress the situation. Today on your docket is approval of a subdivision, and the subdivision, we continue some bad behavior. When I addressed you last time, you took it serious enough that we had a working session in your chambers there outside of the auditorium. Charlie, you were even called the majority of, not a majority, but many of the major presidents of the water companies in the valley into the county offices and listened to our concerns. And there was even a new draft of the code that I had the pleasure of providing some feedback to Charlie. Yet other things took precedence. And I know it's no excuses from anybody, me or others, gravel pits and COVID and others took precedent. So here we are, a couple years later, looking at approving yet another subdivision in which there is only a small fraction of the water has been proposed to the county that would be needed for culinary and secondary as part of the approval of the subdivision. And it will, and it is having a direct impact of existing citizens in the Ogden Valley. And I wanted to remind you of the efforts that we made a couple years ago on this subject, and implore you to finally do something about it, to take it serious, to put it back at the top of the docket, to put it back front of mind, that there is a real situation up here. These land use codes are being interpreted inconsistently. I can show you subdivision to subdivision where the code hasn't changed, yet different rules have been required by the county to get approvals. And yet all of the approvals, again, only require a very small fraction of the water to be required to get those approvals of the subdivision. And it leaves the citizens, it leaves the people that vote for you unknowingly in bad situations. People buy these lots and they either unknowingly steal the water, or they get put in a position that costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to obtain the right water rights that the developer didn't, to irrigate these lots, if they even can, and or even worse, venture off into multi-year lawsuits that cost tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, like the situation that I and my neighbors are in. So I ask that you put this back front of mind and we get some real resolution on the subject. And I hope your families have been safe during COVID, and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you very much for those remarks. I can just tell you this, that we do take water quality and sanitary sewer, septic tanks very seriously in Ogden Valley. I happen to live just a little west of you, and so I understand the water situation, and I'm not exactly sure the issues that you address directly, but I'm sure if you respond or give some information to Mr. Rick Grover, we can answer those for you. But believe me, we do take this serious. I think we just commissioned a sewer study for Ogden Valley so that we can better inform the public and make decisions as we move forward. Commissioner Jenkins, you have a remark?
I did. I remember this circumstance very well. It was just a little over a year and a half ago, and everything he said was right on. I do remember that. Now, we do have a water study that we've just commissioned, and you'll be interested to know that. And I suspect in the next 6 or 7 months that study will take place, and that we'll have results of that. Now, Rick, when we get down to this resolution today to approve this, hopefully you can talk a little bit about the water on that. Because I think he's brought up a really good point here. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, anyone else in the audience that would like to come forward or online? Anybody else? Thank you for taking the time for those remarks, sir. We appreciate that. Obviously, we are very interested in making sure that we address the issues that are brought up. I know that our staff in planning and zoning does a great job of following state statute and following the ordinance. So if there's any concerns with that, make sure you get with us. We're happy to answer your questions or make changes if needed. Thank you very much. Let's move now, seeing none, in terms of public comments, to the consent agenda, Commissioners. Let's start with consent items. F1, request for approval to ratify warrants 3389 through 3401 and 455,666 through 455,762 in the amount of $1,740,903.45, dated December 29th, 2020, and approval of warrants 3402 through 34018, excuse me, and 455,763 through 455,853 in the amount of $554,211.16. F2, request for approval of 2020 purchase orders in the amount of $15,217.11. 3, request for approval of 2021 purchase orders in the amount of $87,940.15. 4, request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on December 22nd, 2020. 5, request for approval of a $7,379.62 donation of Prop 1 funds to the Trails Foundation of Northern Utah for trail bollards and project management cost. And 6, request for approval of retirement agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Lorraine Olson, Cheryl Potter, and Stephanie Tatton. That would be our consent items. Commissioners, questions, comments before we go to Ricky for further explanation?
Chair Flor, could you repeat those numbers for items 1, 2, and 3?
1, 2, and 3
Yes, I think the numbers were off a little.
for the warrants or the dollar amount?
The dollar amount specifically, like it's 3 million, not 1, for number 1. The amount is also 544,000. And number 3 was 877. I think you said
800. Okay, excuse me. 877,949.15. I probably misquoted that. 15,217.11 on the purchase orders. Is that correct?
yes.
500. Is it 544,211.16?
And then 3 million.
And the 3,740,903.45. Is that correct? Okay. They're in different color prints, so obviously with my eyesight, I didn't pick them up very well. So. Okay, with that, Commissioners, questions? If not, we go to Ricky.
Commissioners, we issued 2 purchase orders and 2 warrant registers for the past 2 weeks. The last purchase order run in 2020 was 9 POs for $15,000. Largest amount there was $5,000 for Microsoft server licenses that made up about a third of that amount. For the first PO run in 2021, we issued 102 purchase orders for $878,000. It's common that the POs in the beginning of the year are fairly large, as a lot of departments open up their blanket purchase orders or their open orders. Our roads department issued open orders for road salt, other supplies, and some equipment maintenance, and that was made up 25% of the total amount for $219,000. For 22%, or $193,000, the library had open orders for building maintenance, supplies, and materials. We had 3 items that equated to 12% each of the total, or just over $100,000. One for the transfer station to purchase equipment tires, as well as supplies and materials. One for information technology, primarily to purchase the annual Oracle software license, and then one for fleet to purchase a new Mack truck, including a new bed for that truck. And then the ice sheet had 7% of the total amount, or $64,000, to purchase concessions and building maintenance orders. As far as checks, the last check run of 2020 had 112 checks for $3.7 million. Just about half of that amount, $1.8 million, is for 12th Street construction, and that's paid for through transportation tax dollars. 23%, or $861,000, was health insurance for employees and retirees. And then 16%, or $602,000, was due to CARES Act disbursements, as well as some emergency medical equipment purchases. Now, for the first check run of the new year, we issued 109 checks for $544,000. Exactly half of that amount, or $270,000, was CARES Act disbursements, as well as paying for emergency medical equipment. 13%, or $75,000, was employee and retiree dental, vision, and disability insurance. 10%, or $52,000, was for the transfer station to pay for hazardous waste disposal, as well as some equipment maintenance. And then 6%, or $31,000, is for the jail that went towards food and building maintenance. And that's it.
Thank you, Ricky. Questions or comments for Ricky? Or questions on the consent items?
The comment I have, not necessarily a question, but the comment I have, on page 2, the Staker Parsons for $1.767 million. You said, Ricky, that was on West 12th, and that was the asphalt that was laid. This should be the last major payment on 12th Street. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't a few little sundry items to the general contractor, but this, when it comes to major dollars out of our funds, general fund, to pay for this should be the last major payment on 12th Street. So
I agree.
that ought to make you feel pretty good.
That's good.
Commissioners, we're chunking right away at this stuff. That's really good. All right.
Anything else? Questions? Comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion on the consent items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items as read, 1 through and including 6.
We have a motion
And a second.
and a second by Commissioner Jenkins. Motion was made by Commissioner Harvey. I'm going to place the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Consent items are approved. Thank you. Let's now go to our action items. G1, discussion and/or action on appointing chair and vice chair to the Weber County Commission, and I'll be the presenter on that. With that, Commissioners, I'm just going to make a couple of remarks before I make a motion, if I might, since I'm going to give myself a personal privilege. Maybe the last personal privilege.
Maybe the last one.
Let me just say, I want to thank the staff, Weber County, the people that I've worked with, obviously our staff upstairs. It's been a pleasure in this position over the last 12 months. Commissioner Harvey and Jenkins, it's been a pleasure being part of this team over the last 2 years. And as we've had a very significant, and I'd say sometimes difficult 2020, both of you and our staff have, again, gone beyond the call of duty to support the county and support me in my efforts to represent, in my best efforts, whatever that was, the citizens of Weber County. I felt that the actions that we've taken, the votes that we've taken, again, haven't always been 100% in agreement, but they've been decisions and votes taken on basic principles, which is what's the best for the citizens, what's best for the public. We reduced debt in this county. We reduced our interest cost, present value, which I think is very significant. Probably one of the most significant things that we've tackled this year, commissioners. We've done a lot of other things. The Center of Excellence has obviously been a bright light. Our economic development efforts have taken off and are making some traction, even in difficult times. And just the overall issues and activity that we see happening here in the county because of what we do have, in my opinion, been a benefit to the citizens, because all the decisions that we've made were made based upon what's best for the citizens, not what's best for anybody else. So again, let me just be the first to thank you for supporting me. I know sometimes that hasn't always been the easiest thing, but that's the way it is. A wise man once told me, and it was probably either my dad or grandpa, said, look, if you get into politics, if it's that great a job, you should turn it over. If it's that bad a job, you should turn it over. Either way, you should turn it over. That's what makes our country great, is what I call the transfer of power, turning that over, because nobody has a 100% hold on, in my opinion, on what's right and the proper direction. But as a team, we've done a great job, and I look forward to our new leadership and the chair and vice chair taking this team, moving that forward, looking to maybe a little easier 2021, but again, with results that we can look at a year from now and be very proud of. With that, commissioners, I would move to appoint Commissioner Jim Harvey as our chair for the coming year, 2021.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? I'm going to place the motion. All those in favor of Commissioner Jim Harvey being the chair for 2021 for the Weber County Commission, please signify by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Commissioner Harvey, congratulations.
Thank you.
I know you'll do a great job. I'll now take a motion on the vice chair.
I'd make a motion that we,
No, I think this is Commissioner
yeah,
Harvey's
this is
motion.
Commissioner
How
Harvey.
about, thank you. I'd like to make a motion.
I didn't want to take it.
No, you're right.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner
What were
Harvey.
those last two words you said again, Commissioner? I want to hear them for Becky's sake.
right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make the motion that we have Commissioner Scott Jenkins serve as vice chair.
Thank you. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, I'm going to place a motion. All those in favor?
there a second?
Commissioner Scott Jenkins. We have a second for that? I'll second that motion.
Yeah.
Apologize for that. I'll second that motion for Commissioner Jenkins to be vice chair. No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Commissioner Jenkins will be the vice chair for 2021. Congratulations, gentlemen.
you.
I look forward to being part of that team. I'll now turn the chair over to our newly elected chair, Commissioner Jim Harvey. Commissioner?
Thank you. Can we, Commissioner Jenkins?
The
would you
gavel
mind
does
sitting
work.
Here?
Pardon me?
Would you mind sitting
No,
here?
I'll be glad to.
Thank you.
There's a reason for that.
There is. It's the unspoken order of things.
Right. We won't say why.
I know why.
You got that chair warmed up for me?
Yeah, it's warm.
Thanks.
My posterior is a little larger than yours, so I'm warm all the way across.
Oh, this one's extra warm
Yeah,
over here.
it's a hot seat.
That's all.
Welcome to the hot seat.
What a wonderful day today. Thank you. And, you know, this isn't, thank you for your comments, Commissioner Frohr. This, in the county, for some of us, some of the longer tenured ones, the transfer of power hasn't always happened. And I want you to know that I sustain and support that
that notion, an idea that was taught to you by one of those two wise men that you were referring to.
Exactly, thank you.
You know, if we only listened to more counsel, we might be in a different spot.
Sometimes it pays to listen.
Yes. Anyway, very good.
Thank you.
Commissioners, with that, I'd like to proceed with our agenda at hand and go to, we're on G in our agenda today. We'd like to go to G2, which is the request for approval of a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners appointing board members to the Ogden Valley Park District. Our presenter is Stacy Skeen. Ms. Skeen, go ahead. Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Stace.
You have a hard time remembering who we are. So you want to be able to see that name?
Well, everyone else to know who you are. Good morning. I'm here to present a resolution for the Ogden Valley Park District. They have 4 members on the board whose terms expired at the end of December 2020, and 1 member, Brent Christensen, who is retiring from the board early, so creating a midterm vacancy. I received 5 applications. Michael Loud, Mark Farron, Christopher Allen, Nick Frohr, and Allison Ianello. And I contacted each one to see if anyone was interested in serving the midterm position, and Nick Frohr, that's the position he would like to fill. The others would fill the 4-year term. So, asking for your approval on the resolution.
Just to be, so it was the request of Nick Frohr that he serve the midterm, then, or fulfill the remainder of that midterm vacancy.
Right.
Very good. Commissioners, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to make that motion.
Great.
I'd move to approve the names as submitted by Ms. Skeen for the Ogden Valley Park District and for the terms that she mentioned in the agenda.
Motion recognized. Is there a second?
Second.
Great.
Resolution 1,
Resolution number 1 for 2021. Thank you.
Commissioner Frohr,
Aye.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Aye.
and Chair Harvey.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skeen, for that. We appreciate that. Tammy Adelot. This is a request. Item number 3 on our agenda is a request for approval to ratify the final approval of Sunshine Valley Estate Subdivision, which is Phase 2, consisting of 7 lots. This request includes road dedication and improvement agreement. Thank you. Ms. Adelot?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Just wanted to make a note that we appreciate Mr. Joyce's comments, and I'm sure that Director Grover can address where we are in the process of adjusting that subdivision code relative to water and septic. For this project before you, we have one of the requirements of our land use code is that the applicant provide proof of water for each and every lot within the proposed subdivision, and Mr. Lowe has provided those documents from Weber Basin. In discussions with Weber Basin, so planning tends to follow recommendations from the Culinary Water Company with regards to their requirements for secondary water. As you know, many of the water companies out west do require proof of securing irrigation water. Weber Basin Water has allowed for their leases to be used for irrigation water as well. Typically, their recommendation is that 0.55 of each acre foot be used for culinary purposes and 0.45 be used for irrigation purposes. And that is within the staff report that's been provided to you. Again, this is 7 lots in the FV3 zone in Huntsville. Most of the improvements have already been installed, which is why you're seeing such a delay in bringing this before you for final approval. There is an ephemeral stream that runs through this, and so a bridge has had to be constructed. That has had to go through a lengthy approval process with our county engineering division. And with that finally complete, planning would request final approval on this with the condition that a well permit be secured from the state of Utah prior to recording this subdivision. Do you have any questions for me at this time?
Commissioners, go ahead. Mr.
So
Jenkins.
Tammy, the question I have, so is this a 3.5 acre lot? Or 3-acre lot, I mean?
Minimum 3-acre lots. The total project area is over 30 acres. All of
Okay,
these
so-
lots either meet or exceed
Right.
the minimum requirements.
Okay, so the requirement for water is 1 acre foot, right?
The state, to be honest, in discussions with the state, they don't mandate how much of your lawn you need to water. They do state that typically they are leased in acre feet increments, and Weber Basin has indicated what amount of water is typically used to sustain a typical family-size household.
Right. And this is exactly the discussion that the gentleman who called in commented on. The fact that he's required to get an acre foot of water, which he will purchase and the subdivider will have here. But an acre foot is not enough for 3 acres of land. And so even though we require 50, or we allocate 55% or 0.55 of that acre foot. Rick, I'm kind of looking at you. Do I have this correct? Tammy, am I doing this right?
Can I comment real quick before Director Grover? Our land use code doesn't mandate how much water you need.
I know
Just that you need to secure culinary water. Weber Basin actually outlines those recommendations.
So this is exactly what the gentleman was complaining about.
Right.
Just what you said, Tammy, you're right. We don't allocate, and I'm not sure we should. We should say, look, it's enough for it. But to his point, the prospective buyer, they will come forth buying this and they'll say, okay, you have a well permit and 55% of that well permit is allocated for your irrigation. Well, under an acre lot, that's fine. But under a 3-acre parcel, you just can't go out and irrigate your hayfield behind the house.
Right. And I can see where this gentleman has some concerns where he thinks that it's not being fair across the board, but we rely on Weber Basin and we just require that amount per lot. Right now, what we are working on and as you commissioners are aware, we're working on trying to get a water study completed up in the Ogden Valley. And right now, if you are within an area that provides water, you need to tie into that. But if you don't, you can use the well system. And the ordinance allows for both those options right now. And so depending on where you're located, that determines on which route you're going to proceed. Once we have that water study done, hopefully that's going to give us a lot more clarity, and then we can start moving forward with the subdivision code. But we've kind of been holding back on that because we wanted to get the water study and the sewer study completed, and then also we've had a bunch of other things going on, as you know, as well. So that's where we're at currently with the water and the sewer up there.
So my point is, though, and Commissioner Farrar, this is your area up there, but we're getting ready to approve the exact circumstance that this gentleman that called in was commenting about. The fact that we now are approving 2 acres of weeds, in effect. That's kind of what he's saying. I didn't mean to be dramatic there, but what he's saying is we're going to have a couple acres of weeds behind this house because he won't have the water to irrigate it.
But we do have the ordinance in place dealing with the weed height.
We do have the weed height. Mr. Chair,
Please,
if I could make a comment.
please.
Commissioner Jenkins, you're absolutely right. This is something that's I've been involved with over the past 40 years in terms of development. And Director Grover is exactly right. We require the 1 acre foot for the subdivision lot, which is typically adequate for 1 acre plus a home site, which would allow for culinary water for the home and a small amount of water for a grass area. The issue comes down to when we change zones and required the 3 acres lots. So we are victims. We've created this problem where we've created a 3 acre lot, but only allow 1 home on it. So 1 acre foot, again, Weber Basin, if I want to develop a lot, I go to Weber Basin and buy that water share, which is adequate water, again, for the house and small grass area. But the rest of it, I'm not going to go out and water my agricultural fields or animals. There's not enough water to do it. But we're the victims, or we've created that situation because of our requirement for 3-acre lots. Now, the question comes down to, do we require somebody to come in with proof of, I'm going to call it irrigation water or stock water from another source, which is not that available in any area in Weber County right now. It's pretty much spoken for and taken care of. But in most cases, the extra 2 acres or 2.5 acres that you mentioned is not going to turn into agricultural production. It's just not. And so it could be weeds, it could be pasture. My personal philosophy is I don't think it's proper for us to require somebody to obtain outside water, stock water, just because they have a 3-acre lot. They should provide water for their house and small area. Now, that's a discussion for a later date, but be aware, we've created that situation, or the county has, by the requirement of the 3-acre lot. And unless we require additional water, so they would be required to go out and buy stock water for the additional 2.5, provide that irrigation system, becomes very difficult. So that's the situation.
Before you go, I've recently become aware that water rights usually transfer with the sale of property. I.e., if somebody were to buy 10 acres, they would get 10 acre-feet of water rights. That would be what I understand happens with Weber Basin, and that's what appears on tax notices. The line charge on our tax notice from Weber Basin. The water right transfers with the sale of the property. So what's happened here is hold on, let me finish and that may make sense. Okay. So what I hear has happened here is a gentleman or someone's come in and bought a large portion of property, and then he's selling off these lots at a particular size. We'll say just 3 acres apiece, but only 1 acre of the water goes with each one. So if in this case, if it were all 3 acres and there were 7 of them, there'd be 21 acres. There should be 21 acre feet of water. But in this case, there are 7 homes, so there's only 7 acre feet. My question is what's happened to the other 21 the other 14 acre feet of water? That's my question. And I don't know the answer to that.
Well, so let's follow this along. What ends up happening is the use of the property has changed. And that's what's caused this anomaly that you're talking about right now. So when it changed, the properties, the water that's associated with the property changed. And so now we're going to domestic water, which is in a well system, and the stock water or irrigation water was delivered through a
aquifer or
a ditch.
Ditch water.
So what ends up happening here, like in Plain City is a good example. When I buy or connect to the system
culinary
with Bonavista Water, they deliver it out there.
Is that a culinary?
Okay. So when they deliver the water out there, they require me to be connected to a secondary system so that they know I won't be using my domestic water to irrigate my property with. They don't want that to happen. And the reason is because they don't size the pipe to do that. They size the pipe that they deliver the water in for your culinary services. And they don't want anybody overrunning that. So anyway, then I have to go buy or connect to a secondary system, which is out there, and they will connect me. But in order to be connected, I have to turn water shares in that are attached to the property, because the property is now transferring the use of it. So what's happening here is we're not requiring that transfer to take place. So I guarantee you, this property has been irrigated. It's probably a hayfield or something similar to that right now. And there's water that's associated with that has been in the ditch to serve this. Well, I'm assuming, and you'll have to answer this, Rick, that transfer of water is not following the property here.
So there is, whenever you have an actual underground system in place, for secondary water,
Right.
you have to extend that system.
But
If you
in this
have-
case, we don't, right?
Right. In this situation where you have a well, they're allowed to meet the minimum requirements of our code, and that well can provide the secondary and the culinary water options. But that is just what's required per our code, that 1 acre share that takes care of that.
See, so what's happening here, and this gentleman who called in, he brings us to a good point, is you bring somebody in here that is not a traditional farmer or has experience in irrigating large lots or large tracts of ground, and they're buying 3 acres because that's what we require. And so they buy it and think, okay, here we go, I'm in business. And next thing you know, it's like, well, what am I going to do with that 2.5 acres out back now? I guess I can get a cow or a horse and put on it, or in my case, I don't do anything, so I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to call some farmer and see if he'll take care of it for me. Yeah. But it's not irrigated, and so it ends up being dry farmed and just going to crap. We really need to look at this.
I agree.
But for this subdivision today, all of a sudden, I'm not going to vote for it. And the reason I'm not is because I'm not sure what's happening to the secondary water here. And so I would make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we move the agenda on this and put it on next week's agenda, unless you're prepared to answer the question of what happened to the water that's attached to this.
Yeah, you're fine waiting till the next.
Yeah, I'd like to move the agenda here, Mr. Chair. I'd make a motion to do that for a week.
Motion heard. Is there a second?
I'll second that for time certain. I don't want to hold this particular subdivision up, but just to clarify some things, and Chair Harvey, you made the comment that 10 acres would require 10 water shares.
That's normally the water shares, as I understand. I could be wrong.
Well,
but I understand that water shares transfer with the acres, but I get what you said.
Well, keep in mind, water is different, and appurtenant water is what we call it in the real estate business, which I think is a legal term, is attached to the property. But you also have stock water, so appurtenant water would be required to be transferred. I have sold a number of parcels of property that has stock water, or what we typically call ditch water, that an owner might have 10 acres with 50 shares of Huntsville water. That Huntsville water stock is not required to be transferred to that property. Now, if a buyer and is anticipating that he breaks that into 3 acre lots that wants to irrigate it, a legitimate informed buyer would say, look, I'm only going to pay that price or buy that property if you transfer 10 shares of Huntsville irrigation to that site. Not required. That's private. That's your private property. That's like selling stock. That would be like saying you're going to buy a house. Well, I want your common stock of IBM to go with it. Two separate issues. It's not appurtenant. It's private property that can be transferred or not. Again, the issue comes down to, do we require then somebody that wants to do a 7 acre or 7 lot subdivision to go out and buy 21 shares of Weber Basin? Because in order to adequately water that ground, they would need one water share, 1 acre foot per acre, right? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So the other option for us would say, look, we could, which I think comes down to state code, is that we would have to then amend state code to say, look, if you have a 3 acre lot, we want you to buy 3 Weber Basin water shares. And again, the problem, that may sound like a legitimate issue, but then how do you mandate that somebody puts in the infrastructure? Now I have 3 water shares. How do I irrigate that additional 2.5 acres? Do I put in a pump? Do I put in sprinklers? Most people are not going to pay the additional cost. They're going to say, look, I'm not going to spend an extra $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in sprinkler line and pumps, et cetera, because that 2.5 acre is not productive. It makes no sense to spend $20,000 for pasture grass. Does that make sense? So the option is to require additional water shares. Again, if you're going to require additional water shares, then it leads to the next step. Okay, we're going to require you to come in with a proven irrigation system. To me, that's overburden.
I agree with
That should be up, that's a private property right issue that I can't support. That, again, that would be the determination. But that's how, at least my understanding over 40 years of water rights. Chris?
Yes, that's correct. If there's two ways to transfer water rights, you can deed them or they come appurtenant to the land. One other thing to keep in mind as you consider this matter is that if there are future code changes that are going to be coming about, that would not be relevant to this particular application. We have to view it in the according to the laws as they exist right now. That's called the vesting rule. And if someone comes in and they have met all of the requirements of the land use code, the state statute requires approval.
Yeah. And that's my concern with the delay on this, even though I'll second that, is that we have an individual or an applicant here that's met code for that currently exists. If we want to change that, then we can change it for future. But I struggle with the idea that, hey, we're going to change this now because you haven't met our expectations for the future.
Understand. So, Commissioners, we have a motion and a second.
Can I speak to that again?
We have a motion and a second to delay this for time certain for a week. Commissioner Jenkins.
So, you know, it's interesting. I absolutely agree. There's two ways that water follows the property. It's considered there's so many shares it takes to irrigate and perpetuate crops on that property. The other way, though, is it's done through time in the ditch. For example, in Plain City, on Plain City irrigation shares, each share gives you 7 minutes. And so you buy the shares you estimate that you're going to need on that property. Now, we're required out there to turn those shares in, and in our case, the people who own the secondary system, Pineview Water, can take Plain City Irrigation shares water and they can do something with it because it all comes out of the same ditch. In many cases, that can't happen. You know what I mean? In other words, but those irrigation shares do end up surplus. So where this subdivision right here, 7 lots, isn't it? Yeah, so these 7 lots are going to end up not using their secondary shares anymore, and that will end up being a surplus to the ditch system that owns them, the irrigation company that has that right to that. And so it will end up being a surplus, and I suspect the person who's doing the developing will end up selling those shares back to the company, and they'll do something with it.
Weber Basin.
Well,
I'm not sure it's Weber Basin in this case. Could be, you mentioned one, Gage.
I heard Weber Basin in the presentation.
Weber Basin's providing the shares for this.
Well, that's the primary water.
Correct.
Yeah, but in his case, you were talking about Huntsville water.
Yeah, and you may be right, you may be wrong, based upon, there's a lot of property in the valley.
Right.
And out west as well, that doesn't have access or hasn't purchased additional stock water that can be used elsewhere. So very possible that this particular piece never had any ditch water. Didn't have any Huntsville water, didn't have any Liberty irrigation water. There's a number of parcels, I can name you several right off the top of my head, that have never had ditch water because they haven't had a delivery system.
Right.
And so when you start talking about water, you have to look at where the water comes from, the water rights in terms of are they stock water or is it Weber Basin, and then you need to look at how is it going to be delivered. And without a delivery system, and then without us mandating a delivery system, which would be a Pineview system, for example, becomes very problematic in my mind.
It does. In fact, you mentioned something there, and I've been rolling it around in my head trying to get a thought on. Anyway, you said, well, I don't want to get in the sprinkling or in the supply side.
Delivery side.
Delivery side. I'm not sure I would agree with that. And the reason I say that is if I was buying a lot in this subdivision, I would want to make sure that my neighbors take care of their property because I want this to be a really nice subdivision I'm going to be living in. Well, if we all end up shy of water and we end up with 12 21 or 22 acres of rangeland, or what it would end up being without water, all of a sudden that goes from a very desirable situation to a very undesirable situation. So for us to require a plan or something that would at least denote what their intention was on how they would service that extra land, I'm not sure that's terribly intrusive. Boy, you bring up a good point here, Gage, and that's why I wanted to debate this a little, because you never really know, is it government's role to get into this? Well, in this case, it very well might be. That's a discussion we need to have, Rick.
I think it's a discussion we need to have, but they're meeting the code right now.
Current code.
The current code right now. And right now, the current code says you need to provide this amount, and they have met that requirement.
I'm going to jump in here. I think the current code is what we're talking about that needs to be explored, whether the presentation or the argument was made by Commissioner Jenkins or by Commissioner Frohr. When you talked about delivery system, Commissioner Frohr, and requiring the delivery system or how that delivery system, I get it. Because some people buy a home and they don't have a sprinkler system. They drag a hose. But the fact of the matter is their code enforcement is you've got to take care of your grass, or you got to take care of your property, whether you choose to water your lawn or your flower beds with hauling a garden hose, or whether you put in a sprinkler system or a drip system, or maybe a zero-scape system in your, however that's done. As long as the culinary water and the secondary water are delivered to the lot. And that's where I think you get to is, as a governmental agency, do we require a delivery system to the lot, whether that person decides to hook up to it and deliver the water throughout the house, the flower beds, or the 3 or 5 acres, whatever that subdivision would be on that lot owner, because I don't want to create a situation, because we have a weed ordinance in place, I really want those weeds taken care of. But I want the person in that house to be able to have at least to the curb, so he can choose to pull a hose around 3 acres or deliver it another way. That would be up to him. But I don't want to put that on the developer. That's not his.
Well,
those are just my thoughts.
Well, and I don't disagree with that. The issue is the issue at hand is the measure of extent. The current ordinance, at least the ones I've always lived by, is that the developer needs to provide secondary water at least for a grass area, whether that's by well or whether that's by a system, some type of grass area around the house. So the question is, are we going to say, look, change the code where not only do you have to provide secondary water or a water source, could be primary water, to grass area, or because you have a 3-acre lot or a 5-acre lot, we want you to have enough water, you put in a delivery system and you go out and buy Huntsville water shares to irrigate that 5 acres. We're now putting the burden, and again, somebody said, look, why would I put in, and you take it to the curb, so to speak. Let's say you take it to the property line. We're still requiring that property owner, if we're going to say, are we now going to go up and say, look, we want that 5 acres in alfalfa. Now you have water. We didn't require them to put that in grain. I don't think we're going to go there.
Or require them to put it in zero-scape.
Or put it in zero-scape. I think we still leave that up to the primary individual. So it's really a matter of extent. Do we say, look, we want grass around the house, which probably makes common sense, but you've got 2.5 acres. Are we going to put the burden on them to put in sprinklers and put the burden on the developer to supply enough water, which is really the question, for 5 acres versus 1 acre or the ½ acre of grass around the house? That's the current that's the question.
Yeah. And our current code doesn't specify how big that area needs to be.
Right.
It appears that we need to look at the code, or at least so that we all have a clear understanding. But as the current code sits, then this subdivision is placed according to you. I didn't write down the legal term for it.
It's called the vesting rule. It's Utah Code 1727A 508 1-2.
But as Paul Joyce he mentioned Code 10642, and when he purchased the property back several years ago, he admitted to being an unknowing buyer. Right. You know, not that's in no means disrespectful, but I think what you said too, Commissioner Jenkins or Commissioner for one of you, how many people really know when they go up there what they have, and I think that even in the code, it appears, because of what Mr. Joyce said and the issue we're talking about today, that we could at least do something, whether we do it or we don't, that we could do something about communicating at some point a closing or something, so that the buyer isn't caught like Mr. Joyce is, like, this is what you have, this is what you're required to do, but that'd be the case.
And I'm not sure what happened with the first phase, but there is a recorded document that's supposed to be recorded each lot showing how many shares are transferred with that.
I just don't think, I don't know that people really understand that.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm
not
still
sure if it
learning
happened
about it.
there.
Obviously, I got a little bit of an education today on it. I just learned. Listen, I'm going to place the motion for a vote. We've got a motion and a second to delay this for time certain. And so we have a motion to second for time certain. Shelley, go ahead.
This is a ratification, so it's already been signed.
Well, that takes care of that.
That takes care of that. Well, and I think the point here is the current code, this is already been ratified. We don't have a choice, in my opinion. Now, in the future, let's debate it. Let's make sure everybody understands what the benefits and costs may be as we move forward. But anyway.
Well, I'd withdraw my motion then.
So the motion's withdrawn. I'll entertain it.
Substitute motion, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I would move to approve the final approval of Sunshine Valley Estate Subdivision Phase 2.
I'm going to ask that you change that wording and just say approval to ratify.
That is, it is request for approval to ratify, excuse me.
Thank you.
That is a ratification.
Thank you.
I'll second it, very reluctly.
We have a motion, and what is termed a reluctant second, but whether you win by 1 point or 50 points, it's still a win, right? A motion and a second. I'll place the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I would like a follow-up on this, please, so we can find out what they anticipate these folks are going to do now for water shares.
I'll make sure that happens.
Because, you know, have they made plans? Is there any water that transferred? Because that's what I wanted to find out in the next week anyway. So
We'll get that to you.
yeah, Tammy, thank you.
And then as much, Mr. Wilkinson, Mr. Grover, since the two of you are here and Tammy are here, I'd also like to have this placed in the next few weeks on a work session. I'd like to address it again because I unfortunately, as a city slicker, wanting to be a cowboy one day, admittedly, not growing up on the farm, and loving learning about water, I'd like to be more educated, and I believe there are others, and Mr. Joyce was one of them that like to, if they can in their life, get a little more property to be at least educated on what they're buying, and so that if they do, like he does, wants to take care of his 3 acres and now doesn't have the ability to do so with the way he wants to do it, I'd like to protect that moving forward. So if we could work on that through a work session, and then if you just keep maybe his information too, because I'd love to, in as much as he cares enough to make a comment and come back again and follow up on that, let's keep him in contact. He's respectful, appreciate what he's done there, so thanks. I think through my awkwardness of that, you get it. Of course you do, because you have perfect heads. Okay.
Well, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
One more comment.
Yes. You know why I said perfect heads, those of you who are laughing with hair. Thank you.
So this gentleman that called in made the comment that Charlie and you guys sat down with some water company presidents and you had some meetings. We weren't involved with those meetings directly.
No.
Yeah, I would like a little report on that.
You bet.
Because apparently you've done a fair amount of research here. We would like to be availed of the efforts you've made and what you have found out about that and this and some suggestions.
So what we've done is we've met with different water companies and got their input, because as part of the subdivision code, we were looking at revising the culinary and secondary water requirements, but then we put that on hold because you're looking at a complete water study and sewer study up in the Ogden Valley. And so because of that, that got put on hold, but I'll give you a report on what we have had with them
Appreciate
when
it.
we have that joint
Maybe one of
meeting.
our work meetings.
Yep. Anything else, commissioners?
Not on this subject for
Okay.
me. Commissioners, anything?
Let me just, if I can just make a final comment. I think this is a great discussion to have. An even better discussion as we talk about looking at village areas and creating density in parts of the valley and getting away from the 3-acre lot concept as much, because obviously not everybody needs a 3-acre lot and can take care of a 3-acre lot or has the water to take a 3-acre lot. So I think that's a great discussion to have as we move forward and look at these village concepts. And look, water, quite frankly, as a wise man once told me, is more valuable than the dirt. And if you don't have the water, the dirt's not worth much. And I don't disagree with that. So let's as we talk about that water concept and moving forward, let's look at the overall picture in terms of, what is the future of Ogden Valley. I personally don't believe it's to put 4,500 3-acre lots in the valley, and one of the water issue is one of the main reasons we don't do that.
Very good.
I'm
Thank
done.
you. Thank you. Then we'll all continue to hold our water. So thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. I'm going to move on to item number 4, which is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and the Department of Justice for federal assistance through the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program. I've got Brian Baggs as the presenter. But that is
That
not...
is not correct. Brian Baggs was not able to be here today. So my name is Julie Stoddard. I'm the Financial Services
Welcome,
Manager
Julie.
at the Sheriff's Office. First, I want to start off by apologizing. I understand that this was on the last agenda you had and nobody showed up to present, and so I apologize for wasting the commissioner's time. But we have this approval from the Department of Justice to assist us with the procuring of personal protective equipment and caring for the inmates under this COVID situation. We would respectfully ask for your approval.
Thank you, Ms. Stoddard. Commissioners, are there any questions for Julie?
No,
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Sure area, isn't it?
Sheriff's Office, I'd be happy to make that. I would move to approve the contract by and between Weber County and the Department of Justice, DOJ, for federal assistance through the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program.
And I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second. I'll place that motion for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. Commissioners, it's time now for item H on our agenda, Commissioner comments.
I think I've said enough today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Same here. I've said enough.
Well, I fell short of my 90-minute speech at 9 o'clock. I've got another 60 to go, and I'll yield that time.
Do you mind if we order lunch in while?
I will say, though, to both of you who have made some very kind comments, how grateful I am to be able to serve with both of you. I never imagined that I would be continue to learn at this rate on something that I never thought that I would care to study ever. When people say, well, what do you do as a commissioner? And I think, gosh, what do we do? My first response is we listen to the experts. We listen to you and you and you and you and you. We listen to the people who work here and the people who we work for. And how grateful I am to be able to listen and learn. Also, though, how grateful I am to be able to teach. Many times when people, my wife told me something, she said she learned it from Dr. Phil. And that was my way to try to impersonate him. How's that working for you? Not good. Anyway, she said when people get angry, it just means they didn't get their way. I thought, well, you know, that's right. And so when people call and they're not happy, like you said, once you explain it about the snowplow driver earlier today, the buck stops here. And I think when we really take that time to teach and educate people, I think people respond positively to that, no matter who you are. And under this, I just want this to be said right now too, and because it's a continuation of what I've learned from the two of you 2 years ago and through this last year. Commissioners, we will run the county respecting people. Every person, no matter what they've done in their life, deserves to be respected. Whether they're a prince or whether they're in prison. Everyone likes to be respected. And I think it's only proper for us to afford that respect to everyone until they show us they just can't respond any other way. But I would hope that all of us in all our divisions will respect one another and move forward that way, and don't let those who choose another path determine the way we're going to move forward. So I wish all of you luck and a happy new year. We've shown that we can do hard things in 2020. If those hard things continue for a little longer, so be it. But we've gotten through famously, and we've done so being able to help people through a lot of great things that are done by all of you. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this, to adjourn this public meeting and move to a closed session.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
It's a roll call.
Roll call vote. Fatima? You know, I was going to say that.
I know.
At the end of the
I'm
year
sorry
when
I beat you
finally
to
you
it.
corrected me 15,000 times.
Commissioner Jenkins, Commissioner Faur, and Chair Harvey.
Aye. Thanks. We'll go now to our closed meeting.